Ave, true to Christ. Hey everybody, this is Catholic Trash Talk, and today we're going to be talking about Catholic Defender. He's one of our commenters that I usually respond to, a friend of the channel. He's on the Discord. If you want to talk to either of us, you can come to the Discord that's going to be in the description down below. You can request prayers, you can ask for video requests of anything you want me to watch and respond to. You can ask me questions and reach out to me. I will usually be available on Discord. I'll get to you guys when I can, though. I try to respond to everybody who messages me, or messages in general, so it's good to have you guys. But anyways, let's get into the video. So what you're going to see in this video is this is how you evangelize people and how you tackle people that might not be in the fullness of the truth or might be a little misguided. In this case, our friend here is going to be debating with a couple of Catholics on the street, and one of them is going to be really emotional about abortion. The other one's not going to be as emotional, but he's going to be arguing from an emotional place. So it's just really important that, you have to realize that just because people have Spirit-taught words in them doesn't mean that they're going to know the fullness of the truth. Sometimes even when they're part of the Catholic Church, they might have been let down by their teachers, or they might have not gotten a full understanding of the faith, and they might not even be pursuing, a deeper understanding, and might fall into complacency when it comes to the church.
You want to love your neighbor?
You guys think? Agree, disagree?
It's not up to the doctor to decide. That's a personal decision.
The cool fisheye lens reminds me of...
Let
let me move my face up so I'm not blocking his banner. At least want to keep his banner in the screen there. I have it right underneath me. But the fisheye lens almost reminds me of those skateboarding videos they used to make back in the day all the time. And you especially see them on like skateboarding video games.
Good idea for your neighbor to bring in a child that has a bad setup.
What if a born child's in a family and the father loses his job? Should they be allowed to kill the born child?
Absolutely not. It's a born child. It's a completely different.
So what's the difference between being born and unborn?
So one of the things, and this is a great way that Catholic Defender is approaching this topic. So when it comes to abortion, you got to realize that we are all made in the image of God. So if that is the case, and we have the "Thou shalt not kill," one of the 10 commandments, it's pretty clear that if we are killing our brothers or sisters, or killing somebody who, was made in the image of God, it's unacceptable. And one of the things with that is you got to realize the arguments that people tend to bring to the abortion debate don't usually hold up, because if you believe, like for example what she said here, that there's a difference because one's born and one's unborn, one's in the womb, one's out of the womb, well, now you believe that location determines somebody's value. This is why, what is it, I can't remember. She's I'll look it up. Christina Abortion Students for Life.
Christina Abortion Students for Life.
So Kristen Hawkins, she was what? She is what opened my eyes to these kind of argumentations, and she's pretty based, but she's tried to make a lot of movement in getting policy passed to remove Roe v. Wade. The abolitionists who you see here, Catholic Defender isn't an abolitionist, but the abolitionists have also been trying to work towards that. But the arguments that Kristen made me aware of is that there's the location argument, like I said, where you think that it depends on where a baby is located. That depends on their value of their life, which that's a sad way to look at things. Then you have the brainwave argument. Well, they have to have at least some brain functioning. Well, then if you believe that, we can put anybody who we either consider is dumb and doesn't deserve to live, or we consider anybody who isn't showing brainwaves when they're in a vegetative state that we should not keep them alive. And for me, I used to believe in that argument. I guess I also used to believe in the location argument, but for me, I was comfortable with it because, like, well, if they have no brainwaves, then they're not really being a human being. But being a human being doesn't mean that we have to have brainwaves. You know, we're still made in the image of God, and it takes you down darker paths. Well, then you might hear some people say, well, it's a clump of cells, why should I care about it? Well, when you say it's a clump of cells, that's a way to dehumanize the baby that's in there. Fetus means baby in Latin, or offspring in Latin, I mean. And that's still a baby. And you can try and do whatever you want to try and not humanize it, but it's still a baby. Well, then you sometimes get into the arguments of people are like, well, what about the life of the mother, the rape and incest? Well, as I showed you guys, and I can't remember what video, but here, I'll actually pull it up on here instead of my phone. Let me pause. So I went down a rabbit hole. I found a bunch of different data sets to be able to give you guys. So first of all, we have the Loiser study of abortion, and what they do is they compile information from 8 different states that do actually provide public documentation of what reasons abortions are being done for and different ideas on abortion. So the reasons for seeking abortion, you see, majority of it is elective and unspecified reasons, so it's because they want to. But 2.2% is physical health concerns, 1.2% is abnormality in an unborn baby, which is just tragic. Like, it's already tragic with all of this, but this is literally, what's the word for it? Where you're genocide, where you're it's like genociding somebody based on ethnic cleansing is the first thing that comes to mind, but that's not the word. You guys will probably remember it, but basically just killing them just because their condition is just unacceptable. Rape and incest, 0.4%. And then risk of the woman's life, or a major bodily function, 0.3%. Now this is one people that like to cling to these ones. They think that a child conceived from rape, incest, or for the life of the mother should be killed. Now, if there's nothing else we can do to save the mother's life, out of the two, we have to save the mother's life. That's not only like a Catholic talking point, a Catholic dogma, but that is like a Christian dogma in a lot of cases. But we have to prioritize the mother in that case. But it's not something that we do lightly. If we can, we want to be able to make a way for the kid to be able to seek a better life. Now, Kristen Hawkins, and I can't remember what study she did to prove this, but one of the talking points that she has is that one of the things that the easiest ways you can prevent an abortion is demystify the idea that she's not going to get any help, give the woman plenty of opportunity and resources so that she can raise the child. Second thing is keep the baby alive until she can actually hear the heartbeat of the child. If the mother can hear the heartbeat, she's going to connect with that child on an even deeper level, and it's going to be harder for her to want to actually kill the baby. Freudian slip, I guess, huh? My leftism came out. But the thing is, we got to humanize babies. We got to humanize anybody we see as an enemy, and we cannot treat babies like they're nothing. The third thing you got to do is make sure you're not marrying out of wedlock. You know, you got to make sure that you aren't just marrying because you're going to have a kid, or you're staying together just because you're going to have a kid. It has to be more reasons than that, just that, so you're not self-serving. But all these things are going to help. We need to be supportive of mothers, and we need to realize that, you know, that they're the victims in this. They're being told to abort these babies. They're being pushed towards aborting them by medical professionals. There's a lot of medical professionals that will try to push them into this. There's people that will say, well, they need to talk to their doctor and they just should decide with their doctor. But, if it's a family, for example, and the woman is wanting an abortion, but the man wants to keep the kid, they need to come to an agreement and come to an understanding. We can't just only take the choice because it's the mom that's carrying the baby. So then, we go to something that's in the gut Macher study. Apparently 63% of abortions were medication abortions in 2023, and you can see it's been going up. And this is abhorrent because what medication abortion does is it literally starves the child so that the kid can just die of starvation. That is absolute torture, and just thinking about it upsets me a lot because that is not how we should be treating beings that are made in the image of God. That's not how we should be treating children. That's literally evil. And of course that means I don't know why it's doing this. Okay, I guess we're just stuck on this page now. Yep, we're just stuck on this page now. Whatever. So anyways, with this one, that means that I just realized my face is in the way. So 33% or 37% of abortions are therefore normal procedural abortions, which still isn't good. Well, if we go to the Pew Research, the interesting thing about the Pew Research Center is they accounted for the Guttmacher's Institute study along with what the CDC says. So the CDC numbers are lower compared to what the Guttmacher Institute has, and they're compiling the 8 states that actually report. And you can see here that even though we had a sharp rise since Roe v. Wade from 1973 onward, it has been going down. So we have been seeing abortions becoming less and less. And with a lot of the information that's out nowadays, it's easier for people to find information on why they shouldn't do it as opposed to why they should. The CDC has a similar kind of trend, but they actually point out that after about 2010, we actually saw abortions going down compared to Roe v. Wade. Now, the argument that you would make from this naturally would be that, well, if having abortions actually reduces abortions overall, then it should be a good thing. But it's not, because we're taking the lives and we're playing God and pretending like we have the right to take these these kids' lives. And it's just unacceptable. Eugenics, that was the word I was thinking of earlier. So one of the other thing, so we've seen since looks like medicated abortion is going up about 3% every year. There was one statistic in here. So the demographic that we see with women having abortions, 57% are in their 20s. 31% were in their 30s. And 8% were in their teens of 13 to 19. And only 4% were women 40 to 44. So we're seeing that the areas that need most of our attention are going to be women in their 20s and women in their 30s. So that's the demographic of women we need to be speaking to and turning them away from choosing an abortion. And it's not a good situation. So we see here, please stop that. Okay, I guess we're just, okay. Can I, thank you for that. I just want to, yeah, there we go. That's what I want to look at. So we have 3 states do not collect or report abortion data. I'm getting tired of this doing that. California, we have New Hampshire, and we have Maryland. And then we have 7 states reported through 2020 or earlier, so it's something that happened more recently with Washington, with New Mexico, Tennessee, New York, and New Jersey, and Hawaii. 14 states started reporting from 2021, Alaska, Mississippi, and a bunch of others, and then the rest are ones that have been reporting for a while. So what the CDC has should be pretty accurate compared to the Guttmacher Institute. But, you know, let's go back to the numbers here. So if we take the high estimate of the Guttmacher Institute, we're looking at man, that's crazy. So over 1 million a year essentially, and then it slowly goes down. But we have lost a lot of lives due to abortion, and it's an absolute human tragedy. And even if you lowball it, so you have 930,000, almost 1 million. And then the CDC reports that you have 622,108 in 2021. So that's about a 300,000 difference. But it doesn't matter what number is correct. These are still too many lives that are being lost of potential babies that could have been raised by somebody else. This is usually when people bring up the foster system, that it's terrible and all this, but a lot of times people just make blanket statements, and there are areas where the foster system can be evil, and that there are evil in every organization. There's evil in every person, but would you rather the child have a chance, or are you just going to assume that it's not worth living? That's a really dark way to look at things. So anyways, that brings us back. I know that this was you're only 45 seconds into the video, and you took 17 minutes to even get further, but these things that I'm sharing with you guys, it's important to take these things into account and realize that this is a work of evil. And whether you're religious or not, this is something that shouldn't be acceptable. And we need to call this out. So, anyways, we can continue now.
The difference between being unborn and born, first of all, you can't compare those two things and say that an abortion is something as murdering an alive and living child. An abortion is a medical decision that can benefit your life, either your health or your economic.
Can you name a medical condition?
So, she's trying to go with the argument of there's a medical condition. There is something that's happening that actually is going to benefit your life. So she's very, positive on abortion. But again, if you knew what they did, I don't understand how you could look at that and be comfortable with it. So if you do a procedural abortion, you actually have to take the forceps and these little metal things. You have to actually go into the vaginal canal, and you actually have to rip the baby apart and pull its body parts out. And that's really evil, okay? That's not okay. You have to literally rip apart a little human being. If you do the medical abortion, or the medicinal abortion, you're going to take pills that are going to cut the food supply off from the baby, so it can no longer be able to eat, and it's going to squirm in pain because it can feel pain, and you're going to starve it to death. And that's even more tragic. There's no way that you can say that this is good. And if you're trying to do the lessers of two evil argument, you're just not arguing honestly at that point.
It's actually proven that there's no actual evidence that abortion actually helps women in the sense that it doesn't make their mental health any better. makes them 3 to 5 times more likely to abuse drugs, to commit suicide.
I don't think abortion is an easy decision for anybody, or that it's a mental health
but
beneficiary.
in comparison-
In a long-term life beneficiary, that's a completely
In
different
comparison
question.
to someone having a child and raising it, the person who had an abortion is far more likely to commit suicide. They're far more likely to develop drug problems. Their quality of life and their expected poverty, their success, all of it goes down. The Netherlands.
The Netherlands.
Which is seen one of the most liberal nations in the world, that they were actually looking for reasons to support abortion, and then they had to admit that, okay, on the basis of purely mental health.
Okay, but that's not that question here. The question is quality of life.
Before she corrects her question and talks about that, that's why one of the things that we have to realize is that abortion doesn't lead to good alternatives. I've been with women who have been through abortions, and it destroys them. There is one woman I was with that she had an abortion in the past, and she was a bleeding heart over it, and she carried that pain with her. And then I was with another woman that had admitted to me that she had multiple abortions throughout her life, and she was just a very damaged individual. And the pain that women take with them when they have to go through an abortion is just not something that should be put on them, that they should have to be submitted to. Now, this is usually where people are like, oh, so you're saying that they need to go through the pain and carrying this baby? Yeah, it's like the father, when the father impregnates a woman, he needs to be responsible for the fact that he impregnated her. And now he needs to change his life priorities. He can't do this whole thing of, oh, well, it's not my child. Like, okay, you want to get, you want to say it's not your child, at least get like a paternity test. And if it's not your child, then you're not responsible for the child. And you shouldn't have to feel strong-armed into being responsible for the child if you are not their biological dad. But for those of you who are a biological dad, you do need to change your priorities, and you do need to make sure that the woman is taken care of, that the child is taken care of, and that they can live their life. Life isn't pretty, and it's unfortunate some of the situations that men and women have to go through when it comes to divorce and who should take care of what with the child. But when you're a parent, it's no longer about how you want to live your life. You have a kid to look after. You have a kid to model to, and to make sure that they live the best life that they can. And if you don't do that, you're committing a very big act of evil. Now, like he's talking about, that it leads to drug abuse. It's not surprising. It is hard to deal with this. It's hard to deal with this pain that women carry with them.
Quality of life.
Quality of life for the child, quality of life for the husband.
But we shouldn't kill people if their quality of life
That's
is
not
low.
what the question is. Are you going to make your no? But are you going to make set up a child to have a worse life, something that you physically can't provide for? Bad socioeconomic status for the child, a bad upbringing, parents who may not even want them in their life.
So I was abused growing up by my brother and my father.
I'm sorry, I don't see how that's relevant to
It's
this
relevant because
discussion.
I had a very difficult, hard life.
So his response here of saying, well, I was abused, does that mean that I'm not worth life? And she tries to tiptoe around that, saying, I don't see how that's relevant to the conversation here, but we're talking about the after effects that abuse and being, I've even been with a woman who was actually conceived in incest. And, that when she told me that, I didn't judge her for it. It's just because, she's a child of God. She was made in the image of God. So it's not my place to judge her or think that she's less just because she's been through that. But I know there's people that would judge her for that. And that's really sad. You don't lose value just because of the conditions you grew up in.
I went without food a lot of the time.
I'm so sorry.
Can I make my point, please? Is it okay?
I don't want you to make a point regarding off of that because, first of all,
You're saying that having a difficult life is an excuse.
It's
Do you think
not-
my parents should have aborted me because they were poor?
it's not an excuse.
You think it's a good reason? I'm just asking a genuine question.
It's a personal decision. Your reasoning behind getting an abortion, it can
No,
be
she's not
economic, it can
arguing,
be mental health,
honestly.
it can be
So
whatever.
morality isn't involved at all.
It's morality is personal. You cannot base law in morality. It's just
We
not.
do all the time. Really? So we shouldn't. So if I say that murder is okay, like Nazi Germany did when they exterminated millions of people, and the society at the time, how it was at the time, were they right to do that?
Of course, you can base killing not violence. I'm sure that's based on that's based on another human being. It's based on someone that's living in physical. The morality of
But that's what
having,
we're talking about here is another.
So before she goes into the minutia of that, one of the things we got to realize is that it is right to bring up Nazi Germany, where there was a lot of ads during the time, and if you look up the old ads that were happening around that time for Jews, they were misrepresenting them as bankers, as people with big noses, as disgusting people that live in a disgusting way, that they're the reason that we have a lot of the issues that we're having in Germany. And that was able to coalesce people around the idea that Jews are the problem, that Jews are the reason that the country is falling apart. And so when Hitler was given full authority to do a Palpatine and literally make death camps for people to produce and do things and be treated in absolutely horrendous ways, it was possible because if you've ever seen these embargo study on the I can't remember what institute they did, but basically the study where you had the roles of guards and prisoners, of some students playing the role of guards and visitors, and within a week they had to close that study down because it became too real, where they were getting more and more aggressive because they had no controls for the roles of power that the guards were having, and they were just mistreating their prisoner subjects and treating them like they could be submitted to whatever humiliation or torture, and we're trying to rein them in and get them to follow their rule of law. And it wasn't until Zimbardo's wife came in and said, like, this is unacceptable, this should not be happening, that Zimbardo finally had a realization that, oh shit, maybe I should stop this experiment. But the point of that is, it is really easy for us to fall into the trap of thinking that people are lesser and therefore we should kill them. And so when she's trying to make this about a personal choice decision, and this is kind of like the liberal way of, well, as long as they're not hurting anybody, it shouldn't be a problem. But that's not exactly true. Because, for example, a furry might not be like an animal abuser or anything like that, but as they get involved with the furry community, they might come to some zoophile communities where they actually have sexual intercourse with animals and they actually abuse animals. They could be pulled into that. So while you were right at the time that this isn't something that is going to lead them to hurting anybody, so it should be fine, it should be a hobby that we shouldn't question at all, we have to think about, what is the person doing? What are they getting involved with? What are their beliefs? And we have to understand the person on a unique level and understand that, their choices have consequences. And it concerns me with this woman here that she is not even thinking about the consequences and not really understanding the severity of the situation.
Their human life.
You're talking about a woman's medical decisions. We're bringing a life into this world.
But the life's already in the world.
Well, that's just the
The
difference.
moment of
when life begins.
fertilization is where actually the federal government has already determined, and there's a consensus in the religion, that human life begins at
There's a
fertilization.
consensus most decisions.
Yes.
Really?
96% of biologists agree also.
Really?
Yeah, Google it. Google when does life begin scientifically.
They'll tell you that life begins at the beginning.
So let's check that real quick. I'm going to pause the video and find that. All right, guys, so I found a couple of things. First, I have this article on Swarthmore, When Does Personhood Begin? This is by Scott Gilbert, talking about this, who is a professor of biology. And says some really concerning things, and I'm only highlighting this because, and again, I'll have this link down below, but I'm only highlighting this because I want you guys to understand we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard of truth. Because he says, I can't really tell you when personhood begins, but I can say with absolute certainty that there's no consensus among scientists. Some scientists will say it begins at fertilization, where the zygote gets a new genome, where the sperm and egg combine their nuclear materials, where actually is a long process ending with a two-cell stage. Some scientists will say it's implantation, where you can get a pregnancy. Other scientists will say it's 14-day gestation, where the embryo becomes an individual, where you can no longer form twins and triplets, so that you have one embryo giving rise to, at best, only one adult. Some scientists will say it's week 24 to 28 when you see the beginnings of a human-specific electro in Gram. I butchered that, I bet. And saying if we're willing to say that death is the loss of an egg. Perhaps personhood is the acquisition of the egg, EEG. It was EEG, not egg. Still others say it's at birth or during the parental period where successful birth is possible. Now, one of the things I want you guys to know, if anybody tries to hit you with the relativism point, they're already wrong, because if they're not willing to accept an objective standard and they're just going to be relative and nebulous about these things, then why are we having this discussion if you can't even be serious about this? Secondly, most of these situations that Scott Gilbert is talking about here require the early stages of the baby. So we don't need a consensus to know the truth. You know, it helps us to have a compiled study of things so we know that generally there's a good idea that conception starts at when the egg and the sperm meet to make the fertilized egg. But even in the case where you say implantation, two-cell stage, day 14 of gestation, week 24 to 28, there's at least some part in there where there is a human life. And your concern should be is if we don't so if we grant you and we say that there's no consensus and that means that we can't know for sure, then we really now can't do abortion because we don't know when the life is going to begin. So we don't know when we're killing them or when we're not. And that, that is going to be a disaster of sin. That's not something that you can just wash away and think that it's all going to go away. Now, you could get baptized as an adult later if you weren't properly baptized and be forgiven of your sins. But after you've been baptized, you're going to face a worse punishment if you do something like that. So don't think that you get a get out of jail free card. Now, something that's important is when human life begins, and I want to read this to you guys. This is from the American College of Pediatricians and from March 2017. Now, their abstract is the predominance of the human biological research confirms that human life begins at conception, fertilization, and I bet it. Yep, I figured. It's gonna be cut off, so we're just gonna have to deal with it, guys. At fertilization, the human being emerges as a whole genetically distinct individual zygotic living human organism, a member of the species of the Homo sapiens, needing only the proper environment in order to grow and develop. The difference between the individual is in its adult age and in its zygote age is one form, not nature. This statement focuses on the scientific evidence of the individual human life begins. So that's the abstract, that's the idea that they have in doing this. And it's important that we recognize that when we see this, like it says here, however, that what is controversial is whether this genetically unique cell should be considered a human person. And that is the crux of the debate, and that if you can get past that, you're able to make a lot more headway in this debate. So nonetheless, one could sensibly make the case that personhood can only exist in a living human being, that the division of these two entities is arbitrary at best. And this is what I wanted to share with you guys. So during the first 24 hours, once the sperm and egg bind to each other, the membranes of these two cells fuse, creating in less than a second a single hybrid cell, the zygote or one-cell embryo, to protect his or her bodily integrity. Within minutes, the zygote initiates change in its ionic composition, releasing zinc in a spark that induces egg activation, first modifying the surrounding zona pellicuda, blocking further sperm from binding to the cell surface. Cooperation between sperm and egg components to achieve replication of DNA, cell division, and growth occurs maternally and paternally derived factors in the zygote brain interacting with and chemically modifying each other to initiate the final round of mitonic division in the maternally derived nucleus to enable DNA replication. Finally, the nuclear membranes of the pronuclei break down, called syngamy, technically pronuclear membranes. No new nuclear membranes encompassing both pronuclei is formed. Rather, mitosis occurs with two cells, each with its own identical nucleus encased in nuclear membrane, are formed. So a lot of this language might be difficult to understand, but the main thing to take away from it is there's a 24-hour cycle that happens where the sperm enters the egg, the zygote is created, the zygote creates a protection and changes its whole composition using zinc in a spark that happens that signifies this change, that now no longer any sperm can get in or inhabit the egg. It's completely closed off now. And there's already systems that are in place. And again, this idea that you need to have a brain, you need to have brain waves, you need to have a heartbeat, you need to be outside of the womb is just foolish, because this shows that there is a new life being created, that this is, a unique genetic code that's happening. So they can only happen in the sexual embrace of a man and a woman that have fully functioning reproductive organs. Now, again, you might be saying, well, David, again, like, we haven't finished the video and you're hitting me with all these things. These things are important because we have to know what truth is, and we have to fight against evil, and we have to also be able to call out, come on, man. There we go. Just having all sorts of issues. But, we have to understand this. We have to understand that there are issues, there are consequences to what we believe. And she's just not she's not making the connection of how dangerous this way of thinking can be.
Is that fertilization? By the word conception, it means like to begin.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that having a child is necessary.
I would agree with you for people that it's right and fit to bring a child into the world.
It's not. Were you Googling something?
Now, already, this idea that she agrees only if a person is fit and able to bring a child into the world. So this is where this guy here that's standing in front of Catholic Defender, his point stands where, well, okay, he grew up in abuse, he grew up in poor conditions. Does that mean that he's not worthy of life? Like, if you didn't kill him in the womb, you should kill them when they're out of the womb? No, because you'd say that they're out of the womb. But then, again, it goes back to they only have value based on their location. And you are devaluing human beings with this logical line of thinking that you have. It's not consistent.
I also think it's really interesting. How are you guys bringing God into this? Like, because I'm
Flip that one around, right? So flip that around.
Catholic Defender. Show him what's up.
Wait, you're Catholic?
He's Catholic. I'm not Catholic.
You're Catholic?
I was born and
So the Catechism teaches us in 2270 that abortion is a grave sin.
Yeah. The Catechism also teaches us that, this is something that not only should you not kill the embryo by abortion, the other thing that we have to take into account is that IVF even is sinful, and using conception is also contraception, is sinful as well. To use like a condom, you're trying to prevent the natural process from happening. Even if you were to, for example, pull out and spill your seed on a woman, that would also be sinful, because the reason for you to have sex is to have a way for you to come together between a man and a woman and to produce babies, but it can also be an expression of love in becoming one body. So, we have to realize that, and it's amazing that even before we had the science to prove that the zygote does what it said in the study there, that this is something that the Bible was ahead of its time on. Maybe it's because we have a greater being. So I wanted to get to the footnotes when I get done reading this, but 2270, human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent being to life. Footnote 71. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. Footnote 72. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately wrought in the depths of the earth. Footnote 73. 2271. Since the first century, the Church has affirmed the moral evil of every procured abortion. This teaching has not changed and remains unchangeable. Direct abortion, that is to say, abortion willed either as an end or a means, is gravely contrary to the moral law. You shall not kill the embryo by abortion, and shall not cause the newborn to perish. Footnote 74. God, the Lord of life, has entrusted to men the noble mission of safeguarding life, and men must carry it out in a manner worthy of themselves. Life must be protected with the utmost care from the moment of conception. Abortion and infanticide are abominable crimes. Footnote 75. So the footnotes that you see here, 71, 2270. Mine's a little bit different. So it's one behind. I'm going to make sure that there's nothing else that's... No, it lines up. Kinda. This is so weird. Where's 71? Back there, okay. Anyways, so innocent being to life, which it says footnote 71, but in my book it is 72. This is from the CDF Dominum Vitae 1:1. 72, which is 73 in my book. This is backed up by Jeremiah 1:5, confirmed by Job 10:8-12, and Psalm 22:10-11. 73, which is 74 in my book, is backed up by Psalm 139:15. Footnote 74 at the bottom there. Let me see if you guys can see it. I'll move my face. Okay, so 74 in the bottom here is going to be 75 in my book. And that's going to be the Didache 2 SCH 248, 148, and confirmed by Ep. Barnabe 19.5 PG 2777. Also add a church document, ad Diogentium 5, 6, page 5 and 6, page 2 in 1173. And then Terillian Apol 9, PL 1, 319 to 320. And finally, 76 at the bottom there is, or is it 75 at the bottom there, 76 in my book. And that is backed up by Gaudiet Spets, number 51, paragraph 3. So an important thing with this is, even if you want to say, like, church doesn't know what they're talking about, the church is sinful, whatever, at the very least, like Jeremiah 1:5, Job 10:8 to 12, Psalm 22:10 to 11, Psalm 139, 15, all should at least tell you like an idea of why you shouldn't do it. And we are going to get that because, of course, I'm going to be extra about this. All right, so going on with the discussion, we got to realize that especially if you're a Christian, like even if you want to go from the Protestant take, this is just unacceptable. Even like abortion is unacceptable even from a Protestant take. So first we look at Jeremiah 1:4 to 8. Jeremiah's call and commission. Now the word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Then I said, Lord God, truly I do not know how to speak, for I am only a boy. But the Lord said to me, do not say I am only a boy, for you shall go to all whom I send you, and you shall speak whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord. So with this one, the thing we take from this is we were a plan of the Lord before we were even born. So even if you want to try and say like science proves that the little spark that happens isn't a real thing, God already planned for them to be made in the womb. So for you to abort them at any stage is unacceptable. Let's say that you're a pro-choice Christian. You're like, well, you make an excuse for that. Well, what do you have to say about Job 10:8 to 12? Your hands fashioned and made me, and now you turn and destroy me. Remember that I am fashioned, that you fashioned me like clay, and you will turn me to dust again. Did you not pour me out like milk and curdle me like cheese? You clothed me with skin and flesh. You knit me together and bones and sinews. You granted me life and steadfast love, and your care has preserved my spirit. So this is another thing that shows us that God is helping us at every turn. God is crafting us in the womb. God is doing these things to be able to bring us into the full being of the plan that he had for us. So again, you can't abort them at any stage. You need to respect the sanctity of life. Well, let's say you say those are just hogwash. What about Psalm 22, 9 to 11? Yet it was you who took me from the womb. You kept me safe on my mother's breast. On you I was cast from my birth. And since my mother bore me, you have been my God. And do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Now this is one where some of you might say, aha, so here's the Bible saying that being outside of the womb is what matters. But then I would turn you back to Jeremiah. Like, why are you ignoring Jeremiah then? But God basically what God is trying to do is that he wants to cast you from your birth to save you, to redeem you, to bring you to a better life and to a better standard than what you would have come into the world as. And finally, Psalm 139, 13 to 18. For it was you who formed my inward parts, you who knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you, when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, and when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God! How vast is the sum of them! I try to count them. They are more than the sand. I come to an end. I am still with you. Now this is where I could see somebody that's like a KJV onlyist or a Jesus's words onlyist They could say, well, this was in the Old Covenant. All this was in the Old Covenant, and they don't apply to today. Well, normally, those kind of arguments would work for rights or things that God has made for us, but this is something that God does with every human being. God crafts them in the womb. God forms them in the womb. And so again, at any stage, if you were to abort a baby, that is sinful. Now, if you have a miscarriage, that's not your fault. That is a natural thing that happens with your body. So you can't blame yourself for that, and you can't be hard on yourself for that, even though you might want to. But always choose love, even with yourself. Now, the grave offense, I'm not going to go into this like I did with the others because I think I made the point hard enough, but 2272, formal cooperation in abortion constitutes a grave offense. The church attaches the canonical penalty of excommunication to do this crime against human life. Anyone who procures an abortion incurs excommunication late sciente, sententiae, by the very commission of the offense. The subject to the conditions provided by canon law, the Church does not thereby intend to restrict the scope of mercy. Rather, she makes clear the gravity of the crime committed, the irreparable harm done to the innocent who is to be put to death, as well as the parents and the whole society. Now, in that, we have to understand, like, what is formal cooperation. So let's get that understood for a moment. Let me look something up for that so we can have a working definition. So formal cooperation, and let me double check my source here. Okay, these are good sources. So the AI overview, the sources are from EWTN Network, the Catholic Health Association, Protection of Conscience Project. So in Catholic moral theology, formal cooperation with evil is when somebody actively participates in, desires, or approves of a sinful act, making them morally culpable for it. And this specifically comes from Catholic Answers. So, this is we have to know the difference between implicit and explicit. Formal cooperation can be either explicit, actively agreeing with and supporting evil, or implicit, not directly agreeing, but no other explanation can distinguish their intention from an evil act. So basically, if you are Catholic, unequivocally, you cannot be supporting this. You cannot be supporting you can't be pro-choice. You have to be pro-life, otherwise you're not Catholic. It is such a hard decision. Now, this is what I always say. Just because you're excommunicated from the church, if you were baptized in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, you're still adopted into sonship, and you are a member of the church. But until you repent from this evil act, and until you can at least show God that you are worthy of mercy, you're not going to get your way out of this, because this is like excommunication. This is the worst case scenario that you could ever expect, because you have done such an evil that it is, you have been cut off from the vine. Now, are there priests who might do reconciliation for you and try to provide service? Yeah, they might try to do something for you, but it's a serious offense. But the main thing that you got to realize is that, when you're coming back to the church, you actually have to be repentant. You actually have to talk to the priest and let them know that what you did was wrong, and that you want to do penance, and you want to make up for what you've done. Nobody is beyond God's mercy. And then we have 2274, since it must be treated from conception as a person, which kind of goes with everything else that we were talking about.
and that all life should be valued.
Okay.
Like, because we're all made in the image of God.
I agree with you.
Yeah, so even like the baby.
Well, the funny thing is, she says, I agree with you, but, you know, she doesn't understand the ends of the logical, so the, what's the thing I'm trying to say? When you're trying to take it to its, what's the end thing? Its logical conclusion. The logical conclusion of what she's talking about doesn't line up with what she says she believes.
At fertilization is made in the image of God.
I agree with you that, sure, it is designated in Catholicism, maybe in certain portions of the Old Testament, that
In the New Testament.
that abortion is whatever, that the Bible distincts that. But if you apply that to modern context and how this world is set up and live their lives, it's not a good decision for you to infringe on people who want to make that decision for their personal lives. You have to love the people that are around you, and if they have to make that decision for themselves, quite frankly, none of your business.
Well, here's the thing, right? Do you know?
Before they get into responding to her, by her making that decision, she's trying to say that respecting the sanctity of a choice is more important than what God has commanded us to do. So she hears in one ear that the Bible says this and that the Catechism says this. But then in the other ear it just goes out because she's like, well, we need to make sure the free choice and the choices that people are making are respected. So what I would ask then is, okay, if you believe that, do you think killing people like he was saying earlier, killing the Jews in Nazi Germany, do you think that we should respect that? And to which you would hopefully say that no, we should not. And so if that's the case, then you do believe that there is a line somewhere. And so we need to figure out where the line is on what you think is acceptable and isn't acceptable, and we need to convert you from that.
Do you know what the Blessed Sacrament is? The Eucharist?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so when we go to Mass, we take the Eucharist, right? That's Jesus' body and blood.
Yeah.
Okay? We consume his flesh.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a sacrament, one of the 7 sacraments in the Catholic Church. Okay? Do you know abortion is the sacrament of Satan? So hear me out. No, hear me out. Sacrament of Satan. Hear me out. So check this out, right? So in an abortion,
I was never ever taught that as a Catholic.
Me either.
So here's the thing, right?
Catholic school for
My brother's Catholic.
Can I-
high school. This is
kindergarten.
let me
and
finish.
stuff. Never
Can I
once-
finish?
never
really
saw
interesting
that.
that I never.
So Satan says.
I mean, you can agree or disagree. But
So Satan. But no, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. Ready?
Satan says this where? Where's the scripture? Do you have it?
So Satan says, you must die so that I can live, right? That's what's happening in abortion. This baby must die so that I can live.
It's not-
But
it's
Jesus
not-
says the opposite. Jesus says, I must die so that you can live.
I would actually say that that's probably a false equivalence, saying that I have to kill this fetus so I can live. No, it's
That's
I
exactly
don't want
what
to
people
bring I
say.
don't want to bring this human life into the world, into a life that I cannot provide for. That's a personal decision. Even if you can provide for it and you just don't see it right to have a child for you right now.
well, because that's what most abortions are. Most people.
So the absolute arrogance on display is just really impressive. So first of all, a Catholic defender, I think he was a little bit cooked on this point when it comes to this is a sacrament of Satan. I don't know about that one. I don't remember seeing that anywhere, and I don't think that because a sacrament is an outward sign of grace, and there is no sacraments with Satan. Satan might have his own power of grace or whatever, but that's I don't know about that one. That kind of sounds icky to me. That's giving way more power to Satan than we even need to in this discussion, is what I think in this situation. So, anyways. With this, she is completely denying the commandments of God. Not even like bringing up "thou shalt not kill." She thinks that her personal decisions are more important than the commandments of God. And that is shocking for a Catholic to say. And that's shocking that I'm assuming they're together, like boyfriend and girlfriend, that he is a man that is also a Catholic man in a Catholic family, is not addressing that, is not, realizing what's happened. And that could be because he's cooked. That could be because he has been compromised by the world. There's multiple reasons it could be happening, but this man needs to, and she needs to as well, need to go back to the Bible and really think about what they're saying.
Abortions are most women don't want to.
Most abortions are none of your business. All abortions are none of your business.
Are you a human?
Yeah.
Am I a human?
Yeah, you are.
Did I
That doesn't
start
make
as
it
a
your
human?
business. It's in my business what you woke up and did today, what you went and practiced, what religion you practice. No, that's your personal liberty.
So if my neighbor is out,
It's
so
just
you're,
why are you telling people?
hold on,
Especially an issue that
Because Jesus commanded us.
It's
Hold on. Chris.
the separation of church and state, though.
Would it be
Legal.
Okay, do you know when that? Do you know what that comes from? So Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter in the early 1800s.
So she says that abortions are none of our business, which is right. It's not our business. It's not our business to know whether a person has had an abortion or not. You know, that's not our place to know. But if we were to find out, or, for example, if they weren't to be, to not be repentant of it and they were to speak up and make it public, well, then now it is our business, because when we know that you're sinning, we have to correct you and we have to actually say something. Otherwise, we are being complicit in that. We are letting that evil stand and we're not doing anything about it. So it might not be our business, but it is God's business, and it is something that you need to repent for.
The Baptist Church, and when he coined that term, separation of church and state, that was supposed to be a one-way separation. That the state would not create a church.
So we have Danbury Baptist Association. The legislator should make no law representing an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. From Thomas Jefferson in January 1st, 1802.
Exactly. The state cannot make law abiding by.
No, so that the state can't create a church and say this is what people who live here need to believe. But it's not a separation the other way, meaning that the church can't enact laws for the state.
The church can call for law all it wants, but the state doesn't have to provide it.
So like you look at our
The
laws.
state giving everybody liberty declares that they cannot provide a law based in religion. That's the end all be all. The Bible can say whatever it wants.
Most laws are. Because like here's the thing, you can't really get like
Tax laws, IRA laws, those are from the Bible.
I said most. So like you're talking like murder,
Anything is based in the
theft,
Bible.
right?
Those are
Murder, theft.
equivalences. Those are equivalences. Those are found in everyday life outside of people who don't even practice religion.
Why is murder wrong?
Murder. You know why murder is wrong.
I know why.
You
I'm
know why
asking.
murder.
So this is a good direction to take the conversation, because she's putting everything through a filter of, well, this conversation doesn't really matter because the Bible could say whatever it wants, but it's not going to be beholden to the law, because there's separation of church and state. So these laws that are made without the Bible's input, which isn't exactly true, because there's a lot of people in Congress, in the Senate, in many areas of government that are Christian. So whether they mean to or not, there is a Christian lens, or there is a godly backing behind the decisions they're making. So, and since a lot of them are older, they were raised in a time where church was a big deal, where going to church was a very important thing, unlike how it is today. So those are just some things to think about. But going for the why murder's wrong, we do have to come to terms on that. Why do you think murder's wrong? And you can't get it out of it just by being like, it's just so obvious. What do you mean? You actually have to explain why you think murder is wrong. In our case as Christians, God tells us that murder is wrong, not only because of the story of Cain and Abel, not only in the story of many stories in the Old Testament of people killing people that should not be killed, and how wrong it is, and just wars and all that, but there is a whole commandment of thou shalt not kill, and that is one of the most important things, and that is part of the commandments of loving thy neighbor. And Jesus recontextualizes that in Matthew 25. The two most important commandments, Bible verse. Matthew 22:36-40, where, the first three are you should love your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. And the second greatest commandment, referencing 4-10, of loving thy neighbor. And so it has to do with killing, murdering your brothers or sisters is wrong.
Why do you think murder's wrong?
Murder's wrong because you're taking the life of another person. Does the Bible say that? Sure. Do millions of other religious texts say that? Sure. Do people using common thought and political science, political sense, whatever they want, say that completely outside of religion? Yes, that's a human condition. That has nothing to do with religion. You can exist independently outside of a religion.
Well, even if I were to grant her that outside of religion we still know that murder is wrong. why are you supporting abortion then? That's probably the biggest flip-flop that you could have, because if it is something that comes to natural reason and we can naturally figure out, well, by you saying that we should be able to murder a baby in any circumstances, if the mother wants to decide it, then no, you support murder, so you don't know what you're talking about. So you don't actually know that it's wrong. And you're not repentant about supporting
For
it
example,
either.
right, 200 years ago with slavery, right?
Yes.
There were people then who would say, like, okay, my plantation, my prerogative, stay out of my business here, right? It was like the same thing. It took Christians to...
enslaving other people and making a personal decision based on your... You know why enslaving other people
Yes,
is
because
wrong.
it's oppressing others,
Yes,
and it's
absolutely.
dehumanizing them. It's saying
So you're
this
saying
group of
that
people
somebody
for having these
making...
qualities
A woman
are
making a
right.
So again, I like what Catholic Defender is doing, where he's trying to make this point of, okay, let's say, you don't understand the abortion point. Let me give you an analogy. Let's use the same kind of logic with slaves on the plantation. Slave owners before the Civil War happened, they would say, well, it's my plantation, so it's my choice. So I get to choose what I do with these slaves. And according to her, we should respect personal decisions. Now, this is why it's important to understand this, because if she says that, we know why slavery is wrong, you know why slavery is wrong, it says this whole she's going way too hard on discernment. We need, for this to be a productive conversation, we need to make sure that we understand the same thing, because clearly we don't. So it is the same logic. And if you believe that we should have abortions, then you do believe that we should be able to allow people to enslave others, because it is a personal decision. Now, you could say, well, this is about the health of a person. Well, then I would raise you up. What about bond servants? Bond servants were people that were homeless, that didn't have anything. Should we allow homeless people to be enslaved and be bond servants because they're going to be able to live a better life, being an indentured servant to somebody who is richer? But you see the issue with that if we want to believe that slavery is wrong, then we also have to believe that abortion is wrong. If we believe that abortion is wrong, we also have to believe that the death penalty is wrong. And these are all Catholic concepts. These are all in the Catechism.
Decision to benefit her own life. You're saying that that's oppressive, comparable to slavery.
Yes,
Slavery.
100%. So hear me out.
You have to see...
So she's getting triggered over the comparison. But it is about oppression and violence. When you are enslaving somebody, especially when it's not a bondservant situation, you are enforcing your will and oppressing them and telling them what to do and not giving them the dignity to choose and make their own decisions, because they have to capitulate to you and you're the one in charge of their life. But for her to say that, I think she's going to go on a tirade of this false equivalency thing. You're still oppressing, like you're ending a human life. Of course, that's worse than slavery, but it's still the same kind of idea. We're talking about personal choices, so there's no false equivalence there.
In a godly light, you have to see the difference between those.
To
claim to be a Catholic and to make an equivalence. No, we can't.
Tad here, so we can talk and hear each other?
I don't know how you call yourself a Catholic. I don't, because you're equating the enslavement of millions of people in the generational trauma.
That's a great projection.
To a woman making a decision that will better a future generation and better her life.
Can I respond to that?
You can respond to that.
So for her to say that it's bettering a generation and bettering her life, that's an assumption that she's making. I would immediately challenge that. Okay, well, you think it's going to better a generation, it's going to better her health. How? And we go back to where we started in the conversation, which is why Catholic Defender might have not gone down that route. But it's important to challenge her on these things, because she's calling this guy out for not being, like, how could he say he's Catholic and making this false equivalency? But that's a false equivalency because, like, what do you mean? I can bring up topics and make connections and make analogies, but that doesn't mean that now I'm no longer allowed to be Catholic. It's completely different when we're talking about slavery and the evils of slavery and of abortion.
decide to base that claim in religion, whether you decide to make that in modern thought, that is a false equivalence. The enslavement of millions of people, sure, that is.
I would also attack that trying to do this whole separation of church and state, a way of thinking where, well, whether you do it through a religious lens or you do it through a modern lens, you're doing a false equivalence right now. They can both be interchangeable. They can both intertwine with each other. But again, you're trying to do this tactic of dehumanization, desensitization. You're trying to separate the facts from the sin, and you're trying to excuse the sin and saying that no, because you're valuing the choice of a woman over God's commandments.
The logic behind it, but you just
And I would push back on her
versus the personal decision, the personal
Catholicity.
private medical decision of a woman to protect herself, to protect her life for whatever reasons that are quite frankly none of our business.
Another
that she has to
assumption.
make that extremely difficult decision that nobody wants to make. Nobody's saying it's easy. Whether it is for not them, again, none of your business. You cannot make an equivalence between a total sinful oppressive. That's not.
If someone makes a personal private decision to go rape another.
Well, she's getting really triggered about this, but like you can say all that, but if we're going to go with this whole personal decision, Catholic Defender actually can make this personal decision to make this equation, to equate these things and to give analogies. So you can't actually infringe on his personal decision if that's what you believe in. So you are actually you're being a hypocrite, and you're not even following the logical thing you're putting out there in the beginning, and you're looking like a goofball while doing it.
Is that none of your business?
Absolutely not, because that's in violation of the law. It's in violation of that human being.
So why do we protect human beings from being raped?
Yep, that's a good transition.
Do you just want to keep asking stupid questions?
Well, it's to talk about it.
Yeah.
So rape and abortion are wrong for the same reason.
With that point, when she says it's a stupid question, I would actually push back on her and tell her that, well, these aren't stupid questions. You keep assuming that all these things and assuming that you know the answer, but I'm questioning you because I'm concerned about your salvation. I'm concerned about the fact that you aren't actually holding a Catholic position, and you say you are a Catholic, and you are being very wishy-washy with your points, especially when it comes to like personal decision. And so that's why I brought up the rape point, that if you believe that we shouldn't be able to have any say in what is happening in somebody's private life, then rape shouldn't be something that we should focus on either. And then the other point that she made about the law, I would also say that, and if you think that it's the law that determines whether we should make it private or not, well, there's laws about murder. So why wouldn't we do the same for a baby? Because that is a human being that is being killed.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
They're not, though.
Why is rape wrong?
Then why are we?
Yeah, I don't need to tell you why rape is wrong. You know why rape is wrong.
I'll say it. It's a violent act against another person's body.
Extremely. It's
That's
the
what abortion is.
definition
It's a
of-
violent
it's
act
physical
against another
definition.
person's body.
I'm sorry. It's not.
Women are not sex objects. Babies are not.
It's funny that she thinks that rape is a violent act against another person's body, but abortion is not a violent act against a baby. And to see how far she's fallen in dehumanizing this baby is really sad.
I'm sorry. Yeah, women are not sex objects and babies are not body parts. That's true. But you have a baby in you. Again, you, I'm assuming, you're a biological male, don't have the ability to create life inside of you, grow a life, and physically sustain the needs of that child. No. So imagine that undertaking for a woman to know that she can do that. She's in a position where
Okay,
she
she's
physically
gonna go
cannot
down this
provide for
route.
this child.
There are other options. I mean, we should give the child
Dropping
up
out
for
of school,
abortion.
dropping out of
So already she's trying to go from the emotional argument of, well, you can't understand what they're going through. And so just imagine the horror that they get raped and now they have to carry the child of the rapist that killed them. Yeah, that's a horrible thing. But you know what else is horrible? Murder. So if we are going to say, well, now just because we had this violent act done to them, now we are excusing another violent act of taking and snuffing out the life of another human being. That's not acceptable. That same kind of logic you could use if you were to say, like, well, I was abused as a child, and so I have a right to abuse other people because, it was something that was really difficult for me. And I imagine she'd be like, that's another false equivalency. Stop using false equivalencies. But the reason that works is because, again, the violent act that happened was rape. And so the violent act that you're trying to make sure that you don't have to be exposed to carrying the child and carrying it to full term and allowing it to be born is to end its life completely. So again, you go through verbally or physically being abused, and it's all you've ever known. So of course it's perfectly acceptable to then abuse somebody else because it's what you went through. Because you don't know how to handle it, and you don't want to carry this burden anymore, and so you want to put it on other people. Well, then the argument would probably be, well, we can't oppress other people, which is the whole point of the argument I'm giving you, because we can't oppress babies in the womb.
She could give the child
Sorry.
Give the child a progesterone so she can carry a 9-month-long gruesome pregnancy that will have complete physical effects on her health, her mental health, her body, postpartum disorder, everything under the sun. I don't need to name everything that comes along
I've
with a
seen it.
pregnancy.
I have a child.
Well, again, notice how she's going to the worst case scenario. She's assuming the worst. Grueling 9-month pregnancy. Women absolutely love being pregnant. But carrying the body of somebody that raped them is probably something that would be really hard to deal with. But the other option, like this guy here talked in the beginning, is the abolitionist guy talked about in the beginning, where abortion is going to lead to worse outcomes for the woman and is going to damage her even worse, could lead her to drug abuse, could lead her to all these things. And it's just not a good situation. So what we have to realize is that, again, what we say matters. So she could try and fluff it up as much as she wants and try to say all this of this, that, or the other thing about grueling pregnancy, postpartum depression. She's just trying to fluff it up and make the argument seem worse and make you more sympathetic to the woman, but it's completely at the expense of the baby.
That's your perspective. I completely, you've seen it firsthand. You've seen what pregnancy.
Do you think that parents have an obligation to their children?
I absolutely think that parents have an obligation to their children.
Okay. So why is it that the child in the womb, why does the parent not have an obligation
Exactly.
to protect the child in the womb?
What if I told you that their obligation in making that decision is protecting the child, is deciding that I cannot sustain a good life for you. I cannot take
It's her
this
body,
time.
her choice? No, it's her body, her choice? I was using that. Oh, her body, her choice. Right.
This guy is really... He did not have to be a jackass about this.
So why is it that the child in the womb, why does the parent not have an obligation to protect the child in the womb?
What if I told you that their obligation in making that decision is protecting the child, is deciding that I cannot sustain a good life for you. I cannot take
It's her
this
body, her
time.
choice? No, it's her body, her choice? I was using that. Oh, her body, her choice. Right.
But it's not her body.
Nice soy
It's
face
not
that
her
you made there, buddy.
Whose body is it?
Well, the body inside your body is not your body.
Who's creating
That's what this is
that
about,
life?
right?
If that baby was, if the umbilical cord, say there's a freak accident where the umbilical cord became detached in birth, say the pregnancy was ectopic, if you know what that means.
I know what ectopic is, and I can respond to ectopic if you
Can
want.
that baby sustain itself? Can that baby sustain
This
itself?
No, we should do everything we can to
This is
try to
getting
save kids in
chaotic.
that situation. But what we shouldn't do is
That's
no,
not,
that's what
I'm
we should
not
do.
talking about it.
So what she's trying to do right now is she's trying to catch Catholic Defender in a gotcha, and it's not going to work, because if she wants to do the sustainment argument, well, once the baby's out of the womb, disconnected from the umbilical cord, they can't actually sustain themselves. So if we're going to make the sustainment argument, it takes a long time for a kid to be able to sustain themselves, because even when they're a child, they don't fully know what they're doing, and they are still dependent on their parents. So the sustainment argument just doesn't work, and I would flip that back on her.
Topic. Say there's
No,
an incident.
you said the umbilical cord gets detached.
Sure.
We should do everything we can. We can do. So you're talking late term, right?
I'm not talking late term. I'm talking any point in the pregnancy. Something goes wrong.
And
The baby
emergency
cannot-
C-section is something that we should
And
do.
you think a baby past or under 30 weeks is going to survive in the NICU?
No, but that doesn't mean that we should intentionally kill it.
Based.
There's a
There's a difference. The difference is intent.
The intent is to protect the existing life of a woman.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yes, and she has as much value
She's
as the
assuming
perceived
again
notion of
that-
a human being.
Yes, we all have equal value. We're all made in the image of God. I agree.
Absolutely, and she should be able to make that decision of I cannot carry this baby to you. This is not right for my life. Whatever her reason reasoning may be, none of our business. If she has to make that decision, which is not an easy one to make, she has to make that decision.
But so here's the thing. You
He's
could
still
She's
holding
protecting their
to
future and their life by
choice is more important than God's commandments.
not bringing them into an
by
unsustainable
ending their
world.
life. How is that
We got
protecting their life?
finals in study for. I think we should probably just hit the road. But this was, thank you so much for the conversation. If you're okay with,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
I think what, no, because
I'm
what
not-
I think you guys need to take a step back and think about is the perspective that you're coming at this from.
That's a
and
projection.
Understand that this is a very multifaceted issue that, quite frankly, you'll never experience the full wherewithal of in what women have to go through. And for you to say that, to compare, oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that I had to go through all these things to be able to talk about it. That's when you ask them, okay, but have you been pregnant? Have you gone through abortion? And then if they say no, well, then I guess you don't get to talk about it either, huh? If they have, and they'd be like, well, I have, or they try to throw like a bunch of attitude in it, why does that still preclude me from being able to talk about it? So no matter what, they're not going to win in the conversation.
women are not sex objects and baby are not body parts. You're missing the complete and entire point of this issue and of the women that needs to be protected and sustained. I truly, truly, truly think that if
Half
you're
of,
going,
half of
if
the,
you are
half of
going
the
to
babies
base,
murdered are women.
if you are going to base your argument in protection and sustaining of life, you need to take a step back and determine if it's godly to force people to do something that's not going to be good for
And
them.
you said yourself you're a Catholic. The
I-
Catholic Church is against abortion. So how can you?
So he's right to attack this, and the idea of if they're not ready, like this idea of readiness, nobody's ever going to be ready to be a parent. And what you learn, so when I was younger, I used to think that, you had to do everything in your power to be ready for pregnancy, but older people would laugh at me because they'd be like, you're never going to be ready for being a parent. And that's 100% correct. When I've been with single mothers and I've had to help raise their kids and kind of like show them love and try to be fatherly with them, it really changed my perspective on what it means to be a parent. There's a lot more into it, and if you haven't been a parent, if you haven't been through that, it is really hard to relate to them. And so this idea of readiness, you might want to check your understanding and your assumptions that you're making. You might be overblowing it way more than you think you are, and again, you're creating excuses to extinguish life, not sustain it.
You're going against the Catholic
That way
Church.
since the start of the Catholic Church.
You're going against what Jesus talks
Humanly
about.
against abortion.
I think
Jesus
Jesus
tells
will.
us-
I think Jesus is going to be just fine with that.
Yeah.
I honestly think.
I mean, that's not what he
I honestly
teaches.
think that
Based-
for you to
based
use
response.
Jesus's light and image to spew this hateful narrative.
How is this hateful to try to
Second phase
Trying to
take.
tell women what to do with their personal choices in
You
their
understand that
lives.
in society we do tell people what they can and can't do with their bodies all the time. We tell people you're not allowed to go murder people. You're not allowed to go steal.
That's not a personal medical decision. Of course you can murder someone. Of course you can't go steal.
I'll give you another example. If a woman's like,
So the conversation's not really going anywhere anymore. So this is a good place to stop anyways. I hope this gives you guys a good understanding of like how to tackle these debates when it comes to abortion. They are multifaceted, but there's a lot of same arguments that come into play, and there's a lot of people not thinking about the logical conclusion of what they're talking about and the consequences that's going to come with this kind of worldview. And so this is why it's important for us to challenge the truth and for us to challenge these things that get brought to us. So that's everything, guys. Feel free to bully me in the comments. Tell me why I'm wrong. Check out Catholic Defender, who's going to be down in the description for his channel. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye, everybody.